Deep within the golden glades of Eversong woods, Sylvanas Windrunner was raised alongside her siblings in the ancestral Windrunner estate. Their father Verath was a man known for his wisdom and calming presence. He served as a trusted advisor to King Anasterian Sunstrider. Their mother Lireesa bore a sterner mantle, the formidable Ranger General of Silvermoon. Discipline and duty were the hallmarks of their upbringing. But within the arms of her love, and when she would speak to Lirath, glimpses of tenderness still flickered. She was the second-born daughter, positioned between her bold elder sister Alleria and the youngest girl, the spirited Vereesa. In time, Lireesa gave birth to one final child, a boy named Lirath, whose hair shimmered like sunlight. Each sibling was given a fond nickname, inspired by the hues of their hair. Alleria, with her radiant golden locks, was called Lady Sun. Sylvanas, with her striking white hair, was known as Lady Moon. Vereesa, who shared Sylvanas's pale tresses, was affectionately dubbed Little Moon. And Lirath, with his bright blonde hair and gentle heart, became Little Lord Sun. Though Lireesa was not known for outward warmth, Verath had a way of softening her edges. He could speak with clarity and compassion, diffusing tension with just a few words, an ability that seemed to pass to Vereesa, who would often play the role of peacekeeper in their youthful squabbles. When Lirath was born, Sylvanas held him in her arms and made a silent vow, a promise etched not in ceremony but in the core of her being. She would protect him, no matter the cost. She remembered the words her father had once spoken to her. "I will never hurt you, ever, and no one else will either. With love and courage, I will keep you safe." Those words became her oath. From that day forward, Sylvanas saw herself as Lirath's guardian, whether he needed protection or not. It wasn't a choice, it was now her sworn duty. As time passed, Lirath found his way to instruments. Music had always lived in the blood of the Windrunner family. Art was cherished, a quiet thread woven through their otherwise disciplined lives. But Lirath was different. His gift wasn't just appreciated, it was unmistakable. He mastered instruments with an almost unnatural ease, his fingers flowing across strings and keys as if he'd been born knowing them. And when something didn't come easily, he simply kept going. He played until his fingertips bled, never once complaining, even though Sylvanas had seen the blood. But to her, no instrument compared to his voice. That instrument was her favorite. Even as a baby, she remembered it. He would hum to himself in his cradle, soft and sweet. Lireesa had waved it off, saying, "All of you made noises like that." But Sylvanas had grinned and stood firm. There was a melody. She would often find herself lost in it, especially when he sang Lament of the Highborn. Even when she joined him in song with her sisters, focusing on harmonies helped her keep her emotions in check. But his solo renditions always cracked through her defenses. His pure tenor soaring and then softening. It was as if he sang of a grief that had only just happened, of pain so fresh it still bled, and it always broke her just a little bit, until it reached the ears of Lord Saltharil. Ever the skeptic, he doubted the stories, but Verath's invitation piqued his curiosity. After watching Lirath perform in person, all skepticism vanished. That night, he approached the young prodigy with an offer, a debut performance in Silvermoon City, hosted at his own estate. It would be the first of many. Lirath became a sensation. He was the crown jewel of Saltharil's parties, the very reason many guests attended. His music drew even the most jaded aristocrats into stunned silence. But after 6 whirlwind months, he finally returned home to Windrunner Spire, face alight with a mix of joy and nerves. "Sylvanas!" he called out to her, breathless, eyes wide. "Saltharil wants me to perform in front of kael'thas." She blinked in surprise, then grinned and ruffled his hair. "You are far and away the best of us, you know." Lirath flushed deeply. I don't think so at all. I am honored and excited, but it's just music." "And it's just kael'thas," she replied, feigning boredom. "Even Father has to make an appointment when he's in Silvermoon, and now he's coming to see you perform." But the weight of it was catching up to him. His eyes shifted and his voice dropped. Sylvanas? What if I'm awful?" She gave a knowing smile. "You won't be. You will captivate him just like you do everyone else." Still, the nerves lingered. "Mother and Father will be there to cheer you on," she added gently, hoping it would soothe the uncertainty building in him. How can you be sure I won't mess it up? She raised a brow. Do you think that Saltharil would have invited kael'thas, who is hardly ever here, to a performance if he thought you would embarrass him? That made him laugh, the tension breaking like a snapped string. I cannot argue with you. You always win anyway. Lirath replied with a grin. Of course I do, little lord son. Always remember that. But fate had other plans. Shortly before the grand performance, word arrived that Lireesa and Verath had been summoned away on urgent business. Duty once again eclipsed joy. Alleria, now acting Ranger General in her mother's absence, was required to remain behind to coordinate the Farstriders if needed. Sylvanas and Vereesa, despite their pleading, were deemed too young to attend the event unaccompanied. Before departing, Lireesa placed a hand on her son's shoulder. Her voice was steady, though her eyes betrayed the guilt she carried. She looked him in the eye and said softly that she regretted her duty had pulled her away from such a milestone in his life. If not for this, she said, there would be nothing keeping them from coming. But duty must always come before pleasure. And so, for the most important performance of his life, before the Prince of Silvermoon himself, Lirath would take the stage alone, but not unloved. Lirath said he understood, and perhaps on some level he did. He knew their parents had duties that could not be ignored, and that his sisters, Alleria bound by leadership, Sylvanas and Vereesa by age, had not chosen to stay behind. But knowing didn't make the ache any less sharp, even if he didn't want to admit it. Sylvanas had always been able to read him. From the time he could barely form sentences, his face spoke volumes. And now, as he stood there trying to wear a brave smile, she could see through it with ease. No, really, Lady Moon, it's all right. Our parents have more important things to do than sit and watch me play. He said the words with practiced ease, but the hollowness in his tone betrayed the truth. It stung, and for Sylvanas, it stung too. No, they don't, she thought bitterly. Watching him perform wasn't some trivial indulgence, it mattered. He mattered. And though he was trying to be strong, Sylvanas knew that deep down, her little brother's heart was breaking. She crossed her arms, eyes narrowing at the horizon. It is cruel of Mother to insist that Alleria remain here. If there's trouble, a messenger could just as easily go to the Haven and notify the Farstriders there. But both of them knew the truth. It wasn't about defense strategy, it wasn't about protocol. It was punishment. Lireesa and Alleria had been at odds again. Sharp words, sharp tempers, and a disagreement over Alleria's training. This wasn't a tactical decision. It was a reminder that the title of Ranger General still held weight, and that even Alleria, Lady Sun herself, was expected to obey. Sylvanas could almost hear the silent message behind their mother's absence. You are not in charge yet. It was petty, it was cruel, and worst of all, it hurt Lirath, who had done nothing to deserve it. Sylvanas stepped forward and wrapped her arms around her little brother, holding him tightly. We are all very proud of you, she whispered to him, and we love you. He pulled back just enough to meet her gaze. His smile was soft, but his eyes were shadowed. I do know that, truly. Well... And then he turned away, heading for the stables in silence. A moment later, the sound of hooves echoed through the courtyard as Lirath saddled his hawkstrider and rode off, leaving his sisters behind in the dust. Sylvanas watched him disappear into the distance, her fists clenched at her sides. Little Lord Sun deserved better than this, she thought, heart heavy, and if the world wasn't going to give it to him, then she would. Even if it meant bending a few rules, even if it meant facing down Lireesa herself. She just had to convince Lady Sun. She was the eldest, the most disciplined of the Windrunner siblings, and she'd already taken on more responsibility in their mother's absence. So when Sylvanas made her pitch, sneaking into the performance to support Lirath, Alleria's response came swiftly, sharp as an arrow loosed from a bow. Absolutely not. One of these days, your intrigues are going to get you into some real trouble. Sylvanas didn't miss a beat, folding her arms and raising a brow. Now you sound just like father. They don't ever really hurt anyone. But Alleria was unmoved. She crossed her arms and lifted a single unimpressed eyebrow. Sylvanas rolled her eyes. That was one time, and no one is going to die from sugaring their meal instead of salting it. Even as she spoke, her mind flicked back to one of Verath's many exasperated lectures, delivered after she'd once again snuck somewhere she wasn't meant to be. At the time, she'd insisted it was training. She was sharpening her hunting skills after all. But Verath had just sighed deeply and gestured toward the bucket of water she'd rigged over a doorway. The enemy will not be defeated by a bucket of water falling on their head. She had grinned and shrugged. It would certainly catch them off guard. That earned another of his long, dramatic sighs. Ah, my darling girl. Sometimes I fear the greatest threat to this nation is a clever, idle mind. That memory made her smile now, even as she returned her focus to the increasingly skeptical Alleria. I mean, really, Sylvanas said, pressing her case again. We all know you're just going to stay here and not be called. You'll end up shooting arrows with Vereesa until Mother returns, just like always. It wasn't fair and she knew it. A flicker of guilt touched her as she said it, but the words were necessary. Lirath didn't deserve to stand alone before the prince of their people, not without someone in the crowd who loved him. I'll slip in, watch him play for a little while, and then slip back out, and come straight home, Sylvanas added quickly, hoping Alleria had forgotten one small detail, that Lor'themar would be in attendance. Lor'themar Theron, who knew all the Windrunners by name and face, and who absolutely would recognize her on sight. But she pushed the thought aside. Before Alleria could answer, another voice chimed in. Gentle, diplomatic Vereesa, the peacemaker as always. All Lirath wants is someone in the audience who loves him. Wouldn't you want the same if you were performing in front of Prince kael'thas? The question settled into the room like a warm breeze through open windows. Alleria paused, her expression softening as the silence grew between them. Finally, she sighed. Yes, I would. Very well, Lady Moon, you win. I will keep your secret, just don't be so you. Sylvanas snorted with laughter. She knew exactly what Alleria meant. I'll be the perfect lady, she said with mock formality, already planning her next move. But if she was going to blend in with Silvermoon's elite, she'd need help, namely getting into one of their mother's formal gowns. The dress felt strange, heavier than her armor, more fragile than her leathers. She wasn't one for lace or layered skirts, and neither were her sisters. None of the Windrunner women were particularly fond of finery. Still, the life their parents led occasionally required it, and Lireesa had the wardrobe to prove it. With her hair styled, the dress adjusted, and a wide-brimmed hat pulled neatly onto her head, Sylvanas stepped in front of the mirror. She blinked, startled by the reflection that stared back. For a moment, she didn't recognize herself, but then she smiled. With a quick curtsy to her reflection, equal parts mocking and sincere, Sylvanas turned on her heel and swept out the door. Lady Moon was going to see her little lord's son shine. Sylvanas slipped along the corridor's shadowed edge, the brim of her hat angled low as she listened to the music spilling from the hall. The melody sounded dangerously familiar, Lirath's kind of piece, and panic pricked her spine. Had she missed him? Then a second instrument entered, intertwining with the first. Relief loosened her shoulders. Not yet, she still had time. She drifted along the room's perimeter, her eyes skimming faces, columns, exits. Across the crowd she spotted Lor'themar, unmistakable even at a distance. She pivoted immediately, keeping to the opposite wall to starve any chance of his glance finding her. A voice at her back cut through the commotion. Good day, my lady. I do not believe we've met. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Arcanist Shenethrin. She ducked her chin, letting the hat cast a deeper shadow over her features, and responded with practiced grace. Two false names conjured without a tremor. When he offered to fetch a drink, she accepted with a mild smile. As soon as he threaded into the crowd, she slipped the other way, hunting for her little lord son. Sylvanas! She turned to find Lirath, blue eyes wide, the color of the finest summer day. You are going to get in so much trouble, Lirath said to her. I'll be fine. When do you go on? In just a few minutes. I was going to get a cup of punch. My mouth is so dry. She bit back the urge to crush him in a hug. He was aglow, the nearness of the stage sparking in his eyes. Her concern slipped out as a sharper edge than she intended. Don't get so choked up that you cannot sing. He grinned. You could leave right now and I'll sing like the Thalassian red songbird. It means a lot that you would risk this. You are my favorite sister. You say that to all of us. Well, yes, and it's true. It's just truer with you. Emotion tightened her throat. She promised she'd stay for a couple of songs and then vanish, safer that way for both of them. The decision put a glow in his eyes as he turned toward the refreshment table. A harsh snort of laughter snagged her attention. 4 overdressed youths passed a silver flask, their voices pitched for cruelty rather than wit. If I tapped him on the shoulder, he would probably fall over, one said, and heat flared in Sylvanas' veins. She locked her jaw and kept silent, though her fist curled beneath her gloves. He had a growth spurt, that was all. Taller now than anyone but their father. Not weak, just a body still finding balance with its new height. The ringleader wasn't finished. I hear they tried to teach him how to fight and he was terrible, absolutely useless. Lirath faltered mid-step. But isn't his mother Ranger General? Another boy asked. Yes, that's what makes it worse. They have to be so embarrassed. Lirath straightened, squared his shoulders, and strode toward the front. Sylvanas' heart pounded in her ears. Her whole body felt drawn taut as a bowstring. Their sneers followed him. I'm sure that'll be handy in a duel. Now, brother, he does not have to fight. He can just sing a tragic song about the battle. The words cut because they grazed the truth. With instruments, Lirath was all grace and instinct. With weapons, that grace fled him. No matter how he tried, the forms wouldn't settle into his limbs. The laughter of those boys would echo in her memory for a long time. She saw Lirath's reaction, she felt his pain. And though the fury in her chest was hot as fire, the second breath calmed it, cool and calculating. Not here, not now. She wouldn't ruin this for him. This was his moment, his royal debut. And no pack of vermin would take that from him. But later, oh later, Sylvanas would remember every face, every name, and little Lord Sun would shine again with no shadows to mar his light. At last, Sylvanas laid eyes on him, Prince kael'thas Sunstrider, resplendent in crimson and gold. There was no need for him to boast, no anxious tugging at sleeves or exaggerated posturing to assert his presence like the other nobles scattered across the estate. kael'thas didn't have to prove anything. He wore his nobility like a second skin, regal and effortless. He moved with quiet assurance, nodding graciously to those he knew, and when he finally took his seat, the entire hall seemed to fall in line with him. One by one, the others followed, breath held for the performance ahead. Lord Salthoril rose with a grin, lifting a glass in welcome before gesturing to the stage. With a flourish, he announced the evening's featured performer, Lireisa Windrunner. Sylvanas' heartbeat echoed in her ears. As Lirath stepped into view, the earlier laughter of the bullies flared to life in her memory like a sickness, spreading across her thoughts. He is thin and slight, she thought bitterly. Their words gnawing at the edges of her composure. But her brother's expression was calm, unshaken. He bowed gracefully, stepped forward, and raised his flute to his lips. The moment the first note filled the hall, the transformation was complete. Sylvanas allowed herself a slow smile. No one could do what Lirath did. It was good the youths were seeing the power her brother could wield, but it wasn't going to save them. His music was haunting, beautiful, enchanting. In that instant, the crowd no longer saw a lanky boy from a famed family. They saw an artist, a soul poured into melody. And Sylvanas, hidden behind borrowed silk and a shadowed hat, felt her heart swell with pride. But pride wasn't all she felt. As the final note of the song faded into the breathless silence, Sylvanas quietly rose and slipped out of the ballroom, unnoticed by the now transfixed audience. She moved with purpose, skirts rustling softly as she made her way to the stables. Her mount, Snap, greeted her with a quiet huff as she dug through her saddlebags, searching until her fingers brushed a small pouch. This will teach them to beware what words leave their mouths, she murmured, giving Snap an affectionate pat before turning back toward the estate. When she returned, Lirath had stepped away for a short intermission. He stood surrounded by admirers, their compliments trailing behind him like silk ribbons. Sylvanas paused, watching him from the edge of the crowd. He looked radiant, alive in a way she hadn't seen since childhood. Her heart warmed, but it didn't soften, not yet. There had been 5 of them. 5 who had pointed and laughed at someone they perceived as lesser just because he had more talent and brains than muscles. 5 who had assumed that just because he couldn't fight, her little lord son was worthless. You sharpen your tongue at my brother's expense, your speech will pay the price, Sylvanas thought. She made her way to the least crowded refreshments table, where a cluster of untouched goblets shimmered in the soft light of the chandeliers. She set her gloved hands on 5 of them, carefully chosen, close together but not too conspicuous. From her bodice, she retrieved the packet, wound root powder. Odorless, tasteless, and entirely non-lethal. but for the next hour, its victims would struggle to form coherent words. A perfect punishment for boys who lived off the sound of their own voices. One by one, she sprinkled the powder into the goblets, stirring gently with a flick of her wrist. The liquid shimmered just slightly, then settled. She could have left it to the servers. She could have walked away and allowed fate to do the work. But no, vengeance was personal. She straightened and adjusted the wide-brimmed hat perched atop her styled hair, tilting it downward to better shadow her face. The last thing she needed was to be recognized. Across the room, she saw them, flanked by a group of well-dressed young women, posturing like peacocks. Their laughter was smug, their voices just loud enough to draw attention, as though they believed the entire evening revolved around them. Sylvanas lifted 2 of the goblets and started toward them. Her steps were graceful but measured. She kept her gaze low, her hat pulled just so, hiding enough of her face to make her blend in as another nameless noblewoman passing through the crowd. She approached the group with the subtle charm of someone raised among silverware and sharp tongues, and when she reached them, she offered the drinks with a pleasant smile and a dip of her head, still keeping her face obscured. "Gentlemen," she said softly, "you looked in need of a drink. I thought I might offer a refreshment." "Thank you, milady," one boy said. "Why, yes, we're parched." She turned smoothly away. She made her way to the table to retrieve 2 more goblets. She didn't rush. She wanted to be deliberate, make sure they drank it down in full view. But just as she neared the table, her heart sank. Lord Salthoril and Lady Elisara were already walking away from it. Sylvanas' lips parted, her breath caught. No, not them. She stepped forward, about to speak, to intervene, to offer a warning. But it was already too late. Salthoril touched his face, blinking slowly, then he opened his mouth to speak. It came out slurred and thick, barely coherent, and Sylvanas could do nothing but stand there in stunned silence, hat still tilted, expression hidden, watching her vengeance spiral just a little bit out of control. She had tried to slip back into the crowd unnoticed, to disappear behind lace and pleasantries, letting the chaos unfold without a trace pointing back to her. But when Lord Salthoril began blinking furiously, slurring his words while still trying to maintain his air of dignity, the ballroom erupted. Laughter spilled through the guests, bubbling up from one corner and catching fire across the room. Even Sylvanas couldn't help it. A quick, startled laugh escaped her lips, matched by the poorly stifled amusement of the onlookers. The sight of Salthoril struggling to maintain composure while pressing a numb hand to his cheek was, admittedly, hard not to find amusing. She knew she couldn't hide anymore. Drawing herself upright, Sylvanas stepped forward, lifting her chin and casting aside any hope of remaining anonymous. The hall quieted, breath held. She came out and admitted she did it. But then someone broke through the crowd ahead of her. "I begged her to come." Lyra's voice rang out, clear and brave as he pushed forward to stand by her side. Her heart broke a little. "No," Sylvanas said quickly. "That's not true. He didn't know. He had no idea I was here." She turned toward the crowd, voice steady though her throat burned. "Please, don't blame him for any of this. It was my fault, all of it." Her thoughts ran wild. "I just wanted to show my little lord son support. But my anger with the bullies has clouded my judgment." The truth rang inside her like a tolling bell. Her guilt had already begun to eclipse her pride. Lord Salthoril's face had shifted from pale disbelief to a deep, furious red. He pointed a trembling hand toward them both, the fury now unmasked. His voice cracked, no longer slurred but strained through clenched teeth. "Never come back," he roared. Sylvanas' jaw tightened, but before she could speak, another voice rang out from behind. "My Lord Salthoril!" It was Lorthamar Theron. He stepped forward with calm purpose, coming to stand beside Sylvanas, though his gaze remained forward, never turning toward her. "I want to assure you that everyone will be just fine within the hour. I believe that Lady Sylvanas put some wound wood into your beverage. While it's in very poor taste, it is harmless. And I ask that you be the better person to forgive her this childish prank. She is still very young, and Lirath had nothing to do with this. I am sure the advisor and the Ranger General would appreciate this kindness." The words struck like arrows. She flinched, not outwardly but inside. Very poor taste? Childish prank? It wasn't cruel, just true. That was worse. She bit her lip hard, forcing herself to remain silent. Another voice rose, calm and measured, yet unmistakable. Prince kael'thas himself. "I agree with Theron." The Windrunner family has served the Sunstriders for generations. Surely what was intended as a harmless prank by a high-spirited girl can be forgiven. And I should very much miss the boy's music. Very much. A ripple of sharp intake swept through the room. Sylvanas blinked in surprise, barely able to register the weight of the prince's words. She looked at Lirath, whose eyes had widened as much as hers. He would be spared, that much was certain now. But Saltharel's pride had been wounded, and pride had a long memory. He turned to Sylvanas, jaw twitching as sensation slowly returned to his lips. Still struggling to speak clearly. He lifted a trembling finger and hissed with as much venom as he could muster. "Banished." Her face burned with humiliation as the ballroom doors closed behind her. Inside, her thoughts churned like a storm. Anger, shame, guilt, pride. They all fought for dominance in her chest. She didn't go home, not yet. Instead, she rode until the warmth of music and candlelight was far behind her. Tethered snapped to a tree off the road and climbed atop a large boulder where the woods met the path. There she sat beneath the open sky, dress rumpled and hat discarded beside her, letting the silence stretch long into the night. She just sat there waiting, thinking, letting the stillness press in from all sides. The stars shifted overhead. The wind stirred gently through the trees, time felt suspended. And then, the sound of a hawkstrider. The soft, rhythmic sound of a hawkstrider's gait approached from down the trail. She looked up to see Lirath riding toward her, his silhouette framed in moonlight, posture upright yet calm in the saddle. He rode closer, and when he reached her, she remained perched atop the boulder, positioned just high enough that they were nearly eye level. For a moment they simply regarded each other, two Windrunners alone in the quiet. Then Sylvanas spoke. She apologized profusely, her words tumbling out in one long breath. She told him how sorry she was, that she never meant to ruin his debut, that it wasn't supposed to end this way. He listened quietly, his face unreadable. Then, with a soft sigh and a faint crooked smile, he said, "Well, you got yourself banished, so we'll call it even." Sylvanas let out a short breath of relief, managing a half smile. "It's no real loss. I would never attend his parties anyway." With that, she swung a leg over the edge of the boulder and climbed down. Landing lightly beside her hawkstrider, she untied Snap's reins, mounted up, and together the two of them began the slow ride back toward home. After a while, Lirath glanced sideways at her. "Why did you put the wound wood in his punch?" She kept her eyes forward. "It wasn't meant for him. He picked up the cup by accident. I really am sorry about that. But it was funny." Lirath arched an eyebrow. "Who was it for then?" Sylvanas didn't answer. She didn't need to. "Oh," he said softly, piecing it together. Her grip on the reins tightened. "I couldn't let stand what they said about you, especially since I know you heard it. That might have made you ruin your performance for the prince. It was worth getting banished to see them blubbering and drooling. They deserved that and more." Lirath was quiet again, and then thoughtfully, "You do realize they thought they had been poisoned." The realization struck Sylvanas like a slap. That thought had never even crossed her mind, not once. And the worst part was, she didn't regret it. "I didn't think so," Lirath said kindly. "But Lady Moon, you are sometimes too single-minded. People will end up getting hurt." She swallowed hard and nodded. "I'll be better," she promised. "I didn't mean for it to go that far." "In the meantime, everything turned out fine. You still get to perform, and I won't have to attend dull soirees." She looked over, expecting a laugh from him at that thought, but he remained quiet. "Sylvanas?" he said, and his voice no longer sounded like her little brother's. It was older, wiser, wounded. "Do you really think that was the first time I had heard that?" Her eyes widened, breath catching in her throat. "Oh, Lirath, no. It happens every time I play. Someone always points out that I must be the disappointment of the family, that I'm too weak to be worth anything, and what if they're right?" Her heart shattered. How could he think this? How could he not know how deeply his music affected people? How his family was in awe of his skill? She tried to gather herself, but only one sentence came out. "Lirath, no, that's not true at all." But he wasn't finished. Maybe I should spend more time training. I should learn to fight, to defend myself and others who can't. Become a ranger just like the rest of you. Saving people is much more important than just entertaining them. Her mind spiraled. Visions of him in battle, wounded, chased through the wild like Alleria had once been. Blood, fear, loss? No, not Lirath. He wasn't meant for the battlefield. He had a different gift. One just as powerful. Music. It soothed what blades could not. It reached where arrows could never fly. He was warmth. He was light. She needed that light to remain unscathed by war and death. Those boys are pampered fools who have nothing better to do with their time and gold than to eat, drink, and belittle others who have actual skill. Pay no attention to them. Being a ranger in this household is nothing new. Being a musician and having kael'thas himself rush to your defense, that's something special. Don't underestimate the value of what you do, Lirath. There is more than one way to save people, and one of those ways is giving them a respite from worry and fear by offering peace and beauty. We couldn't be prouder of you. He looked at her and the tension in his shoulders eased. A small, thankful nod. The words had landed. She exhaled, quietly relieved. Perhaps that would be the last time rangering would come up. It wasn't a life for Lirath. She lightened her tone, nudging Snap into a gentle trot. We will still have plenty to do together, even if I can't go to Saltharil's parties. We Windrunners make our own entertainment. I'd never trade dancing or swimming with the three of you, or all the games we make up, or just being with you. But my little lord son, you must promise me one thing. Name it. His smile returned, and with it, the world felt whole again. Don't get so important you don't want to play for me anymore. Never, Lady Moon, never. And with that, they continued down the path toward home, unaware that something else was already stirring within the Windrunner family. Sylvanas and Lirath had barely reached the steps of the Windrunner estate when the shouting spilled through the walls. Lireesa and Alleria. The door hadn't even closed behind them, and already the heated tones cut through the stone like blades. Words like birthright and duty came sharp and unmistakable, each syllable loaded with tension. Alleria didn't want to be Ranger General. Lireesa insisted it was her birthright, but Alleria refused to accept something simply because she'd been born first. She wanted her own life, not one shaped by tradition and hierarchy. At the edge of the hall, Sylvanas spotted Vereesa crouched beside a cracked door. One finger pressed to her lips, she beckoned them over. The three younger Windrunners knelt quietly, shoulder to shoulder, listening in. Inside the chamber, Lireesa's voice took on a razor edge. She wasn't shouting now, she was dissecting, precise, cutting. She asked Alleria if she believed the trial set for her was made so difficult and dangerous in the hope she would fail. For a breathless second, there was silence. No, of course not, Alleria began. Lireesa didn't let her finish. She explained the trial had been hard because it had to be, so Alleria would feel worthy of the title, not be handed it. Even Sylvanas had once asked the same question. Sylvanas' jaw tightened. She remembered it well. Alleria's trial had been a spring paw lynx, tagged and waiting in the woods. She had been given one arrow and a skinning knife. The kill had to be clean, one shot, no other wounds, the knife only for after, but Alleria missed. The lynx didn't. Sylvanas had found her sister clinging to a tree branch, winded and scratched, trying to keep herself from falling or being dragged down. Sylvanas had killed the beast, helped her sister, then marched back furious. But Verath had taken her and Vereesa aside afterward to their favorite spot by the river and explained everything. He'd said sometimes the lesson wasn't in the success but in the struggle, in understanding where someone needed to grow so they could be built up, not broken. Sylvanas had hoped it was behind them. Apparently not. It just doesn't feel right, Alleria said, her voice softer now. It can feel intimidating, Lireesa replied with a sigh. But do not doubt, you were born to do this. It will feel right once you step into the role. It did for me. Sylvanas blinked. Wait, did that mean Mother hadn't wanted to be Ranger General either? She exchanged a glance with Vereesa and Lirath. All three looked equally confused. But Alleria wasn't convinced. What you do is important, Mother, I know that. But there is a whole world out there, one you've never let us see, a world full of people, other cultures, other ideas the Quel'Thari would do well to know about. Our kingdom would have been overrun thousands of years ago if it had not been for human aid." Lireesa's answer came as expected, firm, unmoved. The Quel'Thari had taught the humans magic in return, given them power, so she saw their debt as paid. She told Alleria to leave matters of the outside world to her father and the other council members. "The only people who should matter are right here, and they need protection. That is your task, Alleria." There was a pause, and then, "Please, don't make me feel guilty, Mother." Her voice barely a whisper. Lirath, seated between his sisters, winced. Sylvanas' stomach twisted. She should have taken him straight to bed, should have kept him away from this. He wasn't made for tension. He thrived on harmony, on music and softness, and the invisible threads of peace that connected people. It was agony to watch him sit there, shrinking into himself. Vereesa saw it too. Our little peacemaker, Sylvanas thought. The two eldest had inherited all of Lireesa's fire, but Vereesa and Lirath had their father's calm, his love of balance. At least it's an even number to balance it out. "It will be all right, Lirath," Vereesa whispered gently. "They will figure out what is best. Come now, let's go to bed." Lirath stood reluctantly. He let her guide him down the hall, but just before they disappeared, he glanced back. The look he gave Sylvanas stopped her cold, hollow, hurt. Today had been his day. It should have been about him. Instead, their parents were called away. Sylvanas nearly ruined everything, and now this. More shouting, more arguing, more drama. Lirath didn't deserve this on a day as special as this. She waited until the voices inside dropped, no longer sharp but wary. The storm had blown itself out. Later that night, Sylvanas lay beneath the covers, pulled high to her chin. She stared out the window at the blue-black sky, pinpricked with stars. Somewhere in the distance, she heard a lone bird call, one of the night-guarding hawks circling the spire. She would make it up to him tomorrow. They'd go to their favorite spot, just the two of them. She'd pack a picnic. They'd stay until the fireflies came. And then a memory stirred. Lirath, 4 years old, spinning barefoot in the grass beneath the twilight, piping a little tune while fireflies blinked and flickered around them. "Look, Lady Moon! Even the stars have come to dance!" Sylvanas smiled faintly, her throat tight. "If ever the stars would come to dance," she whispered, "it would be for you, baby brother. Only for you." The day had slipped by in pages of parchments and hushed conversation. Sylvanas had spent hours bent over ancient texts with her father, dissecting strategy, elven history, and the politics that came with being born a Windrunner. It wasn't unpleasant. Verath had a way of making even the driest lesson feel like preparation for something greater. But by the time her study was done, she was desperate for fresh air, and time with her brother. Lirath had grown hard to catch lately. Silvermoon had claimed him more and more with each passing week. Prince kael'thas had insisted that he move into the artist's quarters and begin a formal apprenticeship. A high honor. Sylvanas suspected he wouldn't be long before the title of royal musician was bestowed upon him. It made her proud, and quietly nervous. The world was beginning to see in him what the Windrunners always had. But today, she had him. Their favorite place was the beach below Windrunner Spire, where the land gave way to waves and the sky stretched wide. On sunny days, they swam until their fingers pruned. On gray days, they wandered the shoreline, feet in the sand, collecting sea glass and half-buried shells like hidden treasures. Today was somewhere in between, overcast but warm. The tide was calm. Sylvanas and Lirath followed the winding path down the cliffs together, boots in hand, stepping onto the sand where the beach stretched wide and inviting. As always, Lirath veered toward the tide pools the moment they reached the shore. He had a habit, one Sylvanas had seen since they were small. Every time they came here, he checked the same spot, knowing fish often became trapped when the water receded. And sure enough, there was one today. Every time. Sylvanas murmured with a smile as she watched him wade into the shallows. With cupped hands, Lirath gently scooped the little creature from the pool, cradling it like something precious. Then he made his way to the surf and released it into deeper waters, only to grin over his shoulder and, without warning, dive headfirst into the next wave. Sylvanas laughed, shaking her head, and made her way toward a flat, sun-warmed stone just above the tide line. She settled down, letting the familiar rhythm of the waves lull her, the ocean breeze brushing through her hair. Just for a second, she closed her eyes. When she opened them, the sun was touching the horizon, drenched in golden fire. She blinked. Had she fallen asleep? Groaning, she sat up and brushed sand from her arms. She hadn't meant to nap, not with time so scarce between Lirath's studies and performances. Frustrated at herself, she stood and scanned the beach, but he was gone. Her heart stuttered. She called his name once, twice. No answer. Panic prickled along her spine. Her gaze swept the waves. Time slowed, the air thinned. And then, there, a shape in the water, face down, unmoving. Her breath caught, and without hesitation she bolted into the waves, the cold slamming into her like a wall. She swam with frantic power, cutting through the surf until she reached him. She turned him over, arms trembling. "Thank you for the rescue, Lady Moon." Lirath's voice, calm and amused. Her heart nearly stopped in her chest. The fear washed out all at once, leaving her dizzy, but not dizzy enough to stop her fist. She punched him square in the shoulder. "You scared me half to death," she snapped, voice trembling with leftover terror. "How did you even hold your breath that long?" "What do you think happens to lungs when you play wind instruments for hours a day? It's the perfect prank!" She glared at him, soaked and shivering. "You are very bad at pranks, little lord son. Never pull one on me again." The grin on his face faltered. Only then did he see the depth of her distress. He hadn't thought it would affect her like this. Hadn't thought it through. She stood there, taking deep, ragged breaths, fists clenched at her sides. Then slowly she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Her cheek resting against his ocean-chilled shoulder. His skin was cold, but he was breathing, his heartbeat steady. He hugged her back without hesitation. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Sylvanas said nothing at first. Her thoughts drifted. Back to Saltharill's soiree, to the wound-wood powder, the wide, panicked eyes of boys who thought they'd been poisoned. Suddenly, it didn't seem quite so funny anymore. She let out a breath and stepped back, brushing wet hair from her face. "You know, maybe we should both stop playing pranks." Lirath nodded in agreement. Sylvanas raised an eyebrow. "Except, of course, on people who really deserve them." He grinned again, the real grin this time. Agreed. Together they trudged up the beach, shoulder to shoulder, the sky above them streaked with pink and violet. They didn't speak again until they were nearly back to the estate, but the silence between them wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. And before we end off today, I just wanted to say something. Just like what Sylvanas said to Lirath, don't underestimate the value of what you do. You matter to someone, and you're doing great. Keep it up. Thank you for checking this out. I hope to see you in the next one. Please take care of yourself.